Today's Legends video is going to be something a little bit different from normal because there's going to be zero gameplay in today's video. I know, big letdown. However, starting today is the Pauper Rumble. And because of that event, I thought I would showcase not just one, but 4 decks that you could consider playing. We're going to go through each one. I will also put the deck codes for all 4 in the video description. But the reason that I'm going to go through them is because even if you don't use these exact lists, hopefully you'll kind of get an understanding for what I was thinking when I built the list, so that you can maybe use it as a skeleton, right? And then put your own meat on it, if you will. So we're going to start with an assassin list. Now this is a very aggressive assassin list, and here it is. And as you can see, very low curve because it's aggressive, and if you know me, it makes an awful lot of sense. I like to play aggressive decks, but the big reason that I wanted to play this was because I really feel like in Pauper, some of the most powerful cards that you can utilize are the allies, and you're going to kind of see that as a theme as we go through these decks, because these 3-cost creatures, if you can get yourself to where you're pretty consistently getting them to trigger, can be some pretty big swings, especially in a low power format. So what are we looking at here? Well, we're looking at 37 blue cards, so that's a pretty high chance of triggering Cunning Ally. But we also have some constructed staples that are just also really, really powerful commons. So I'm running a couple of lesser wards for just quality trading, Crown Quartermaster, and Midnight Trespasser, and Scroll Seeker. Now all of those are fantastic 1-drops for different reasons. This one for its resiliency, Midnight Trespasser for your value, Crown Quartermaster just because it's a great fighting 1-drop, if you will, that will also give you that Steel Dagger. Also run in 3 copies of Firebolt naturally along with Cunning Ally because there's not a lot of like amazing removal in the common slots. I mean, there are some staples, right? We do have Lightning Bolt. This deck is also running a pair of Channeled Storms, for example. You know, Piercing Javelins in the format, things like that. But you're not going to be running like Edict of Azura, etc., etc. So Firebolt's actually a pretty powerful card. And again, this is an aggressive deck. So really, cards like Channeled Storm, cards like this Firebolt are meant to be low mana cost, low magicka cost cards that provide you with the ability to continue applying pressure, right? So decks like this are going to be all about establishing early tempo, right? Getting somewhere between 1 and 3 legitimate threats on the board, and then trying to protect them and or use them to continue to push damage to finish your opponent off. So Firebolt, great at doing that. Flameslinger is in here because it's a warded creature and it does damage, so it's pluses all around. It's also, because it's got ward, a great target to carry items. So I'm just going to jump ahead a bit. Satanine Courier. You're also going to see that as a trend in a lot of my decks because if you know me, you know I love Satanine. I cannot get enough of it, and so being that it's a common, I want to abuse it in Pauper. But other stuff that's kind of floating around here in the 2 slots, right? Daring Cutpurse, Quality Prophecy has the potential to snowball. Doesn't see a lot of constructed play because there are so many things that take it out. And even at the common slot, there are a number of cards you can expect to see play that can still target this Cutpurse. So Firebolt, Execute, cards like that can still hit this, but you're just more likely to get value out of Cutpurse in a format like this. And honestly, just free bodies from Prophecy don't hurt. It's going to show up in the 2 slot, but really this here is all about the Noble and the Feldu. So Noble just gives you a big body at the end of the game. Feldu gives you a nice early action that also helps you with trading. Feldu combines very nicely with the Flameslinger, very nicely with the Scroll Seeker. This card is really all about getting you through guards, and you should expect a lot of guards, and so you need ways to get through them. If you have not been playing Legends for a while, if you were not around for the last time we had Pauper events, you can expect to see an awful lot of East Empire Crafter, and that means a lot of big butted guards. How do you get through them? This is one way to do it. Finish Off is another way to do it. Now, I didn't want to go all in on either strategy, but both of them combine very, very nicely with your smaller creatures, so running a pair of each. And again, this one just gives you kind of like that nice peace of mind of having a big body late game as well. Inspiring Soldier, just a good quality 3/2 that gets you some extra value. Slinking Jackal, very aggressive card. And then when we go to the 3s, not a lot of surprises really here either as well. As I said, we have the Channeled Storms, we have these Cunning Allies. Camelorn Hero, very aggressive. Discerning Thief here is all about just giving you a quality statted body at 3 while also letting you kind of rifle through to find the answer you need. So if you can get this hitting a few times, then you can hopefully find some of these cards so that when those guards inevitably do come down, you have a way to deal with them. Manic Jack. Many of you may not realize that's a common, but Manic Jack is definitely a common, so we're running him. Now, not a million ways to trigger him, right? Because we're not running Ward Crafter, we're not running Royal Sage. You know, those cards, unfortunately, not common. However, he can still be hit by his own Manic Mutation. Manic Mutation, by the way, also another potential way to get lethal. Feldew will pump up your Manic Jack, as will the lesser wards that we are running. So while he's not going to grow out of control, he's still a quality card here. And then just Lightning Bolts to finish off the curve. Now, that's a pretty low curve, but again, this is a very aggressive oriented deck, right? This is this is a faces the place kind of deck. Again, it's a deck after my own heart, so this is the Assassin list. Now you're going to notice something very similar basically for the first 3 decks, and that's that I like to play aggressive lists. So if Assassin's not your thing, this is a very similar deck in that it is a sorcerer version. So you're going to see a lot of the same card choices. In fact, I think all of the blue cards are actually identical. So again, the lesser wards, the early 1-drops, ward, Satanine, right? All of these blue cards are basically identical. But if Assassin's not your thing and you want to go with sorcerer, what do you gain by adding endurance? Well, Dragontail Savior is a big body for a common card. This is very often, you know, a 3/3 or even a 4/3 for 2. Very, very good. Windkeep Spellsword is another warded creature so that you can even further take advantage of Satanine Courier and those nice value trades. The one Skinned Hound here is just like as a kind of a tech choice. And then on the other end of the thing, we've got Servant of Jacques and Cursed Spectre. And I'm actually running 3 copies of both of them. Spectre because it's a prophecy, but both of these are really all about the silence. There are not a lot of quality silence cards that exist at the common slots, but these 2 are good enough and they provide some upside. This has the potential to just be a 4/4 for 3, which is pretty good. This Spectre here, again, because of the prophecy, can be very relevant, but really this is all about trying to find those ways to combat East Empire Crafter. So you lose the lethal and the finish off cards, you gotta have something, some sort of answer, so I'm going with silence in this particular package as the other way to drive your damage home. Now, honorable mentions, right? Cards that I would also consider including, but the reason I didn't was because I was already very heavy in 3-drops. But if you're running the Sorcerer package, the 3/4 in Endurance, where when you slay a creature it gets +1/+1, is also reasonable. I just feel like the possibility of a 4/4 and or having the freedom to silence something is just better. So again, basically the same blue shell, but with endurance instead, because it gives you some nice fat early game creatures and then a package of 6 silence cards. So this is the still very aggressive but sorcerer version of the deck. Now moving on. Nothing says aggressive like mono red, right? This again, very aggressive list, but I actually think this one is going to be a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to playing it myself. This is a red list that's also got a bit of an item package in it, so let's kind of take a look at what we got going on. And our 1-drops here, it says 9 here, but it's really 6. It's counting this one twice. We've got Cloak and Dagger and Steel Scimitar. Running the Cloak and Dagger because, one, it's a common, so that's the reason we're running all of these cards, but also because it gives you a lot of flexibility. And again, with some of these other item-focused cards in the deck, it's just more opportunities for you to activate them. So actually, I'll just jump ahead a little bit. Well, no, we'll wait. I'm just teasing you. I'm sorry. Spoiler. Now let's go through some of these other cards, right? Circle Initiate, constructed playable card, has Prophecy, has the potential to be a 4/3 for 2, very, very good. This Ravager here is, again, very aggressive, also has Prophecy. 3/2 with guard, reasonably statted, also has Prophecy. So as you can tell here, trying to shore up the aggressive mirror with giving you some free cards potentially. Prowl Smuggler, aggressive, has a snowball effect, also again equipping steel daggers to things. That'll be relevant in a bit. Relic Hunter, aggressively statted creature, and we're running a fair number of items. Specifically, this is an amazing card with Relic Hunter because it will trigger on both the cloak and the dagger. So if you have this down and this is what you trigger with your treasure hunt, it's a lot of value. All right, so one of the item cards that we're running, Rahad Horseman, right? Simple enough 2/2, becomes a house for dealing damage with just a single item. You throw a Steel Scimitar on this bad boy, for example, and you're looking at a 7/4 with Breakthrough, and this is in a format where cards like Edict of Azura, where cards like Sorcerer's Negation, etc., do not exist. So with a Steel Scimitar, this thing has to be answered by like Channeled Storm, Lightning Bolt, Piercing Javelin, or multiple cards. And again, that's just with the Scimitar. You talk about like Cloak and Dagger, you can throw just one of those on there. Relic Hunter can buff those things up, etc. Again, there's a lot of ways to also just plain activate this card, which is kind of nice. Because we also have things like Prowl Smuggler. So this card I think is very good in this format. It's very good in an aggressive list. But let's move on because we got some more fun synergy stuff. So again, item, right? But also Prophecy. So this can be a defensive Prophecy that saves you because of the guard. This can also just be an aggressive card. It's basically like a 3/1 charge because it's an item. I like this card a lot in this format. Fighters Guild Berserker. Now, this is one of the cards I'm counting as caring about our item package. Now, not all of our item triggers are going to trigger our friend here because something like Prowl Smuggler, for example, does not trigger expertise. It does not trigger just equips. It has to be cards played to trigger expertise. However, Cloak and Dagger, Steel Scimitar, Covenant Plate, those cards will trigger Fighters Guild Berserker. So you already get a nice 4/2, which is an aggressively statted creature for 3, but potentially lots of expertise triggers. Cloak and Dagger is really awesome with this card, for example, because if you play this guy and then you also play, just say, the Cloak side, for example, well, then for 4, you got a 4/4 that dealt 2 damage to your opponent, and the next turn, if it survives, now that you know it survived the investment, you can also slap the dagger side on it, swing for 6, and then again it will trigger a second expertise, right? So Cloak and Dagger loves this card. Just a good quality guy. Mighty Ally. As I said with the other 2 lists, I think allies are very powerful cards in this format, and 100% trigger rate on Mighty Ally means you're paying 3 for a 6/3 breakthrough, and this is again in a format where your more powerful removal answers are missing. Now, there are still a lot of ways in this format to deal with it. In fact, 3 health and less is like the sweet spot because there's still access to Crushing Blow, Channeled Storm, Reverberating Strike. There's going to be answers to this card, but forcing them to use it on this means some of your other threats might survive, and that's just beautiful. Morkel Gatekeeper. This is the creature version of Covenant Plate. Prophecy, defensive, gives you some burst. This deck actually has a fair number of prophecies. 15 in a 50-card deck is a pretty solid number, in my opinion. Riften Pillager. This card is great for aggressive decks, and this is really your real top end because you're never going to play this on curve. So I know that this curve looks really wonky, but the reality is this is like your 3-cost card that you're playing on turn 6 or 7, and hopefully you're playing this and another 3-drop. But even if you've broken 2 runes, this is cost effective. If you've broken 3 runes, if you're spending 3 magicka to get better than a Pit Lion stats, and again in a format where your more powerful removal options aren't available, this card is great. Next up, we also have Rahad Battle Mage. This is another one of those cards that cares about items, and this is your own big fat guard. In a format where you can expect to see an awful lot of East Empire Crafter, having your own guard's kind of nice, and this is just a really quality creature to include in a deck like this. They're split because, surprisingly, I don't actually own 3 normal copies of the card, and I don't have 3 premiums. Like, this is the only 3 copies I have, but it's actually just 3 Stronghold Patrol. Why? Because card draw is kind of light in the common slots. You're running only red cards, so why not run a card that if you have 2 red creatures out, you just draw a card. All right, so top end of this is, again, very similar to the sorcerer list. Your top end cards that are your 4 costs are really all about getting around East Empire Crafter. So 2 copies of Drive Mad. I'm running this over, for example, Fell the Mighty, which I also know is a common because Drive Mad is more likely to always give you value. Fell the Mighty might be a dead card, for example, if they have, Dark Guardian on the board. Even if it's been buffed by East Empire Crafter, that's still a 3/6. Drive Mad is at least some sort of use in those scenarios. It might not outright kill the creature, but it can at least help you put some damage on it, where Fell the Mighty, while it can be incredibly powerful, Fell the Mighty also might just be a dead card at times. So I'm going with 2 Drive Mad, 2 grappling hooks, because again, we want to trigger those expertise things. We want to trigger our item creatures, but also this is a fair amount of burst. You're paying 4 for +3, and moving a creature is very, very big in this format. You can get those guards out of your way, or if they're trying to hide their East Empire Crafter behind guards to continue making more guards, you yank it out from hiding over to another lane and then trade into it so that you can get rid of that annoying card. So Grappling Hook is actually fantastic in this format. Finally, Savage Ogre as a one of. This is the Red Encano of the Pauper format, believe it or not. You're getting a 5/5 and you're dealing basically 5 bonus damage. I know it's not 100% a 1-to-1 comparison, but it's pretty close in the Pauper format. So your one of Savage Ogre here is your Red Encano. And this is my aggressive red list. Now, I did want to run at least one deck, or at least showcase one deck that was a little bit slower, and I've been saying it a lot, East Empire Crafter. You can expect to see a lot of it during this event. So this is one potential way that you could see a deck with East Empire Crafter appearing, let's say. So, if you're not familiar with East Empire Crafter, I guess let's start there. East Empire Crafter is a 3-cost 2/4, and when you summon another creature with 5 health or more, give it +1/+1 in guard. So the idea is that you play this and then you just play a bunch of big dudes or big ladies, and they get buffed, but again, because they get guard, you can also protect East Empire Crafter, protect your other creatures, and that's where the real value comes from. It gives you some sort of way to like dictate or control the board. So Moon Bishop, this is a nice flexible card in an East Empire deck. You either get some health, right? You get that gain 4 health, or for 1 Magicka, you can make a 1/5 creature. But late game, if you top deck this and it feels a little lackluster, but you happen to have East Empire Crafter, you can spend 1 Magicka and make a 2/6 guard. That is asinine. So this card, fantastic in a deck like this. Dragontail Savior and Windcube Spellsword, they're in here for the same reason that they were in my Sorcerer deck. They're just very quality creatures at the common slot. But some other fun includes, right? So this Bloodkin, 2-cost 1/5 with Drain, but a 2-cost 2/6 guard Drain is a whole lot better. So again, because it has 5 health, it would trigger East Empire Crafter. Skinned Hound is in here because of a couple of reasons. One, a lot of flexibility, but 2, for some of these cards, right? Let's take the Bloodkin, for example. If you play Bloodkin and you don't have East Empire Crafter on the board when that happens, it's an okay creature. But being able to play Skinned Hound and then suddenly make this a 1/7 guard means that you're kind of making up for the fact that it was not, played when the crafter was on the board, right? So this is kind of insurance when you're still trying to find ways to just play a million guards, which is what this deck is looking to do. Other cards that are included here. So we have Warclaw Mercenary. Might seem like a weird inclusion, but a 2/2 for 2 isn't the end of the world, and the real bonus here is the Rally. And the Rally is relevant for a couple of reasons. One, it's another way to make sure that some of these creatures get to 5 health, maybe even before you play it. So next up on our list, for example, is Wily Kiva. This is in here because 2 for a 2/4 is great, but if you hit this thing with Rally, and then you play it post East Empire Crafter, then suddenly you're paying 2 for a 4/6 guard? It's insane, right? So Warclaw Mercenary is great at turning on some of these other creatures, right? You can get a lot of value out of this, and then because you're potentially playing a lot of cards with guard, you have more ways to potentially protect your mercenary as well. You play this, next turn you slap down a Dark Guardian because maybe you don't have your East Empire Crafter, and then suddenly, boom, you've protected this pretty well, and unless they have a guard of their own, you're going to get Rally for a couple of turns, really get some value going. So I think these are good includes. One of Covenant Mail, I'd like to get more of these in, but for now it's just a one of because of the prophecy, and it's an additional way to slap guard on something. Dark Guardian is in here because it is just very, very good in this format. East Empire Crafter is the entire point of the deck. Servant of Jaka J, I'm running as a 3 of, just like I'm also running a 1 Curse Spectre. This is again prophecy, but the combination of these two is again more about the silence. You're gonna need answers for other East Empire Crafters. These are a great way to do it. Also worth noting, this card, if it gets hit with Rally and then you play it with the Wax, means that this could become a 3-cost 6/6 with guard if you have the East Empire Crafter on the board. Just shenanigans. All right, Stalwart Ally we got here. We're running 33 endurance cards. I wish that we were a little bit more, right? I typically like 35 or more, but I think it's close enough. But if this triggers, then it's a 3/5 guard on its own with East Empire Crafter. You're paying 3 for a 4/6 guard. Again, I think that the upside is entirely worth it. We're running Tide Crawlers as a 3 of. Why? 2/6 guard for 4, pretty good in this format, but also East Empire Crafter, but also, believe it or not, this Smoked Leg, when you're playing so many creatures with a high health total, this leg is completely relevant. There's going to be plenty of times where you can actually just pay 0, heal a creature, and get a lot of value with this list. Like I said, 1 Curse Spectre. I'm running 2 of this guy just because I think it's hilarious. It's a 2/5 guard, but if you have another creature in each lane, it becomes a 2/8 guard. If you have another creature in each lane and one of them happens to be East Empire Crafter, then you're giving yourself a 3/9 guard for 4 magicka. It's just hilarious to me, anyway. Lurking Mummy here. Again, they're split because for whatever reason I didn't like own a 3 of on premiums and non-premiums, but 3 Lurking Mummies. Prophecy is important in this format. Guard is important. More than 5 health is important. It checks all the boxes. Same thing with Piercing Javelin. You need Prophecy. This has got a much lower count than some of my other decks, but those Prophecies are good. Javelin is arguably just the best removal in the format. And then on your top end, 2 Sense Tigers, because they just naturally have guard and they're big boys. 1 Clockwork Apostle, this is like your willpower version of Uncano, and 1 Bloodline Outcast, and this is just to help you with stabilization, but also, making it 8/8 guard if you have East Empire Crafter out is pretty good as well. So, these are 4 lists. You can play them as is. Deck codes will be in the video description. You can take them and say, okay, I see where you were going, but I want to make some changes, and you can do that. You could do something wildly different, but I think that they give you a good idea of maybe what you can expect to see, or at least give you a starting point if you don't have any ideas. So hopefully this helped you. If you made it this far, if you're still listening to me ramble, I appreciate you. Thanks for watching. Until next time, may you walk on warm sands, and good luck in the event this weekend.